Welcome everybody to the Denver Broncos franchise on Madden 20. My name is MrHurriicane. Today I am recapping the offseason for year 2 in the Denver Broncos franchise that I streamed over the weekend. Now this was a big 3-hour stream. It was a lot of fun. I'm recapping the whole thing today, plus showing you a little extra at the end. And if you want to watch the stream, it is linked. But let's get into it. Obviously, the first 2 years of this series have been very difficult. We are now a combined 10-22 in the series, and the offense is coming off a rock-bottom campaign where we were last in so many categories. I knew how important this offseason was, and I put a lot of time into preparing for it. I knew I had to revamp the offense and think about adding a new quarterback to this team. And what you're seeing here is just the overall regression, which that's mainly affecting our defense. Von Miller and Chris Harris, two of our stars. They are regressing, but they're still very good players. We also get some more regression for players like Garrett Bowles and Phillip Lindsay. But I made it known very early on in the stream that I was thinking about adding a veteran quarterback, and I regret not doing that last season and forcing quarterbacks who weren't ready into action. I've now done that with 3 quarterbacks, Locke, Brooks, and Adam Kane. And I also made it known that my preferred veteran quarterback was Josh Rosen, being that he's only 24 years old, still on his rookie contract, and has solid short accuracy. Plus, he was close to his very next upgrade. The chat really did not like the idea of me going to get Josh Rosen, but I felt like he was the best veteran that we could go after and have a potential future with if it were to work out. So I set that aside and went to re-signing our free agents, and off the bat, that did not work out too well, and a lot of people wanted to see Garrett Bowles just go to a new team. He wasn't great last year, but I look at this offensive line as already having needs, especially at center. And Bowles is a lot better than a lot of other tackles. I didn't want to just make a bunch of extra needs because a player might be overrated or overpaid. You've got to balance that kind of stuff. And while I offered contracts to Ron Leary and Garrett Bowles, they both declined my offers. Phillip Lindsay has had a lot of trouble staying healthy in this series, but I still wanted to keep him on the team, especially at a pretty reasonable salary. So I went to match the fair offer on a 4-year contract and was unable to get a deal done. I was left with the franchise tag and a lot of players that I could put it on. I decided to take Garrett Bowles. I really did not want to have to pursue another tackle on top of the needs we already had, so I tagged him. But still look to free agency for some potential fixes. And right off the bat, I saw Trent Williams available. I know I went after Rodney Hudson last offseason. That didn't work. Of course, I wanted Williams. If we don't keep Phillip Lindsay, Dalvin Cook, that would be very hard to pass on. There's also Marlon Mack. I wanted to address wide receiver as Sutton and Hamilton have not taken that next step, and we had a couple good options there. At quarterback, Phillip Rivers would be okay for a season, but I'm trying to find a multi-year fix. And while Mitchell Trubisky was available, his accuracies, when you take away the morale boost, they do compare to Rosen's. Trubisky's overall is propped up by solid deep accuracy, good throw on the run. He's a solid quarterback, but not one I wanted to give a big deal to. Instead, I wanted to trade for Josh Rosen and see if we could finally give him the right team to succeed. What I wasn't sure of was how difficult it would be to acquire Rosen, and what would too much look like. A 3rd-round pick didn't even get us close to acquiring Rosen, which is not what I expected. I had no intention to trade a 1st-round pick for Josh Rosen, but I had to try and figure this out if we could make a move. I decided to set that aside for a little while and go to the free agent market, and I was worried that Trent Williams just wouldn't be interested. I've had a lot of bad free agent luck with Madden lately, but I offered Trent Williams a 100-point bid for 2 seasons. It was the highest bid that I could see, so I made a very competitive offer. Then Brandon McManus declined the initial offer. I gave him another one. At running back, I was going to offer to Dalvin Cook, and for a few seconds I actually had a 2-year offer there, but what made me rethink it was the fact that his injury rating is lower than Phillip Lindsay's. Now, we've had a lot of bad luck with Lindsay. I am looking at the injury slider. It has changed for the newest version of Mat 10 sliders. So ultimately, with the higher injury rating and higher speed as well, I gave a 2-year offer to Lindsay instead. We move on to wide receiver, and there were two primary options for us. I wanted to add a speedy receiver that could get downfield. Sammy Watkins, a proven veteran. He would be a good option, but there's also Curtis Samuel, who's a bit younger. He's 97 speed. His route running is still not spectacular, but it's solid across the board. Also, Watkins has an injury history, and I had to take that into account. The fact that Samuel can still get better at 25 years old, and he already has that dynamic speed, 6 higher than Sammy Watkins, I had to make the offer for him. And we sim to the second stage and see Trent Williams did accept the contract offer, and so did Curtis Samuel. We also get Phillip Lindsay and Brandon McManus back with the Broncos. A very successful start to free agency. But who's going to throw the football to Curtis Samuel? I saw some of the needs for the Dolphins and thought, now that we have Matt Kilhouse and Trent Williams, Garrett Bowles is expendable. I could play him at guard, but I would much rather try to make a trade, and the Dolphins had a lot of interest in Bowles. They needed some help along their offensive line, and I ended up throwing Dalton Reisner into the trade offer as well, and saw that it would be close to getting a deal done, but this was not going to be easy to accomplish, and I couldn't just put Drew Lock in the offer and make this deal happen. They made this such a difficult trade, but ultimately, a deal was made as we sent a 3rd-round pick with Garrett Bowles and Dalton Reisner for Josh Rosen. Not a bad return on a player they gave up a 2nd-round pick to acquire. And Bowles and Reisner immediately become 2 starters for the Dolphins. So here is Josh Rosen, the player that I wanted to be our QB1 entering this next season. I want to give our young quarterbacks a chance to develop and a veteran to play that can hopefully raise the level of offense that we've seen throughout this series. I also wanted to trade away Drew Lock, thinking he'd be pretty fed up with us by now anyway, and was able to get a 2nd-round pick from the Chicago Bears. This was a very late 2nd-round pick, one of the last picks in the round. I felt like it was too much, but Locke is actually the top quarterback now on their depth chart. I felt like this was a pretty successful start to free agency and the overall offseason, but knew the draft still had a lot we needed to take care of. And I had to think about, is the quarterback of the future on the roster? There was one quarterback in the draft that I had to really consider, and that was Taquan Layton. With his combination of short accuracy and speed, I felt like he was a talent that we could not just ignore. Oliver Raymond and Justin Colbert looked like solid players as well, but I felt like Layton was the most intriguing. My main priorities in the draft were to address center and add another wide receiver, even after adding Curtis Samuel. First of all, Samuel is a solid receiver, but he's never even posted a 900-yard season in our series. And I felt like with how strong this receiver class was, the fact that Hamilton and Sutton have deals up after this coming season, we still had to address this spot. And I still wanted to add a receiver with a lot of speed. Somebody like Deion Price, who ran a 4.3 4.40, has outstanding agility. I also had a lot of interest in Idaho receiver Adric Young, one of the best route runners in the class. There was also Ben Ayers, another overlooked wide receiver with great downfield speed. But there were so many players at the very top of this draft I was considering, especially with 2 early 2nd-round picks. Remember, we traded Kareem Jackson for a 2nd-round pick when the Bills were trying to make it to the postseason, and I'm pretty sure they lost out the rest of the way. They were like 5-4 at one point, and their season just fell off hard. So that became a very nice pick for us. I also wanted to add a running back. Phillip Lindsay has been on injured reserve multiple times in the series. Royce Freeman's a free agent after this year, so I did my homework on the running backs. Checking out the retirements, the 2 big standouts, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, they both retire. How would that impact the quarterbacks in this draft class? Free agency was exciting. Myles Garrett ends up signing a near $100 million deal to go to Miami. That team keeps getting stronger. They also add veteran safety Malcolm Jenkins. Phillip Rivers ends up signing a one-year deal with the Patriots, so maybe they're not looking for a quarterback in the draft any longer. Mitchell Trubisky gets the big deal from the Jacksonville Jaguars as he takes over for Nick Foles, who's still on their roster. With fifth-year options now in Madden 20, I was able to make a couple decisions here. Bradley Chubb's fifth-year option was up. Of course, I picked it up. But also, we now had the fifth-year option for Josh Rosen after acquiring him. And I wanted the 2 years of control there. And I decided to pick up his option as well, not realizing exactly how fifth-year options are set. I know that in football it has something to do with like the transition tag salary for that position, so I didn't realize how extreme this salary would be for next year. We're going to come back to this later in the episode. I went back to the free agent market, and knowing we had to add a guard, I decided to give a contract offer to Kyle Long with some of our remaining cap space. With the retirement of William Hayes, we had a spot open along the defensive line, and Calais Campbell, the veteran defensive lineman, was available. Of course, I'd love to add him, although cap space was getting pretty thin. Both veterans ended up accepting the contracts, meaning free agency went extremely well for us. Plus, thanks to the tag of Garrett Bowles, we were able to acquire Josh Rosen. I have no idea what would have happened if I didn't tag Garrett Bowles, because I was set on getting Rosen, but without Bowles, the price may have been way too high. I don't know what I would have done, honestly. So let's get to the draft, where the Raiders started by selecting edge rusher Princeton Ross with the #1 overall pick. The Vikings at 2, they go Kerry Rose, one of the top linebackers in this class. We were sitting at 7, and I felt pretty good about getting who I wanted there. Chase Mosley off the board as Washington replaces Trent Williams with the best left tackle in this class. Good move. Next up, Tennessee goes edge rusher. Moses Ingram will now line up opposite Harold Landry. Next up, the Miami Dolphins. I was not happy they were picking 2 spots ahead of us, and they go Landon Shanky, one of the top edge rushers in this class. Last year, they built up the offense. Now they're working on the defense. And 1 pick ahead of us, the Bills select Hayden Jean-Charles, the top tight end and top overall rated player in this class. None of those players were my targets with our first round pick. Maybe it's too early for a center, but I felt like this was a can't-miss prospect at a major position of need, and we select Norman Proctor, a 79 overall center with hidden development and outstanding skills to be a day 1 starter. I am extremely happy with that selection. I also knew with our other second round picks I had interest in trading up. It was all about where was the right spot. John Cologne off the board to Philly. Brian Bennett going to Cincinnati. The Steelers address their secondary. Pearson Northcutt, free safety. The Arizona Cardinals go offensive line to protect Kyler Murray with Lance Swenson. It was an excellent O-line class, and I considered trading up for another lineman, but I had other plans. Silas Hart goes to San Francisco. My main target next was going to be wide receiver. Jason Burgess had that great speed and spec catch ability, the catch in traffic. He could be a really fun receiver. But there was also Terrell Corville. Great release, spec catch, catch in traffic, not quite as fast as Burgess. They were both extremely interesting receivers. But I didn't want to give up too much to move up. Jaden Leggett goes to the Buccaneers, and at 14, the first receiver is taken. Terrell Corville will team up with Kenny Golladay in Detroit. Was it time to make a move to go get Burgess? I didn't here, as the Colts select defensive tackle Garrett Brewer. Next, the Giants. Could this be the first quarterback spot of the first round? No! They go Colby Frost, middle linebacker from Ole Miss. Next, the Cleveland Browns. They go George Lobato, another linebacker off the board. New Orleans, with Drew Brees retiring, they do draft his potential replacement in Justin Colbert from the Kalispell Warhawk dynasty. He was a Warhawk, won a national championship, transferred to Texas A&M, and now finally in the NFL. Next up, our rivals in KC took Bill Williams to protect Patrick Mahomes. I got serious about trading up after that, and the Packers were here at 20. It was going to be too much to move up to this spot, so I let them stay put, and they select Shaquan Johnson from Boise State. The LA Chargers, needing a quarterback, select Oliver Raymond from Penn State, meaning we will see him twice a year. And we will go through these quarterback ratings, of course, following the draft. Next, the Baltimore Ravens. This was a great pick. DeMar Thomas, the corner. Excellent press man cover corner. I really wanted him on our team, but I was trying to be patient with how many options there were on the board. But once he was gone, once Corville was gone, I knew my chance to make an impact was shrinking, and I tried to trade up with the Carolina Panthers. This wasn't enough, so I had to sim past their pick, and they take Jason Burgess, and I was okay with that. Yes, I was trying to trade up. Burgess was not the target. I'm not sure if the chat knew that, but I was trying to trade up for a different player. Adrian Spikes goes to the Rams. Michael Alexander, great tackle, still going late first round. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. Could we make a deal with them for the player I wanted? A lot of people thought I was trading up for a wide receiver in this spot because I was talking about receiver a lot, but rather, I was going after Eric McKinney. The defense hadn't gotten much love this offseason, and I want to be prepared for Chris Harris retiring or leaving and the decline of Bryce Callahan. So McKinney, I don't think is ready to play right away. He's very one-dimensional, and he'd be a better safety on day one than corner, but I want to develop him into an all-around corner, and I would compare him very much to Byron Jones coming out of UConn. With that start to the draft, I then wanted to target wide receiver. I knew if I went corner first, I could still get receiver later, so I didn't prioritize trading up for somebody like Burgess. I also thought about Taquan Layton. His skill set, a chance to develop a quarterback with his skill set would be a lot of fun. But I wanted to stay put for the time being and not give up more depth in our draft. So the first round continues. The overalls definitely dipping for a lot of these players. Randall Agnew, a corner, goes to the Texans. That could have been where McKinney went if I didn't trade up. The Bears go defense with linebacker Garrison Landry. The Dallas Cowboys at 31, DeAndre Steele. He'll be an edge rusher opposite DeMarcus Lawrence. And the New England Patriots, the champions, select Jamichael Wooden from Louisville. On to round 2, and the Raiders start it with the first running back taken of the draft in Amani Jones. I thought about trading up because I was worried receiver could go here to the Dolphins, and receiver did, but they took Jaquan Jennings and not Deion Price. So Jennings, a hidden development receiver, ends up in Miami, and we at pick 7 of the second round get the receiver that I wanted, and that was going to be Deion Price. A very speedy wideout who can go downfield and make the plays we've been missing in this series. He has 97 speed, 84 deep route running. He has a lot of work to do to become a complete receiver, but I love the way that Blackjack goes about building these draft classes, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But Price has a very bright future if we can develop him. He only has normal dev though. The Giants surprisingly did not go quarterback in the second round. I thought many teams could, but as we made it to our pick in the second round, we see that Taquan Layton was still on the board. And after all that we've addressed in the offseason and the lack of a critical need, I didn't see any way I could pass up on Taquan Layton with his upside at the position. Layton is the pick, and he gets hidden development at 69 overall. Quarterback on this team is suddenly very interesting, but my plan is not to start Layton too early. I've made that mistake 3 times. Leighton has solid short accuracy and speed. He needs a lot of development, and I will try to find some ways to utilize him even as a rookie. I am going through to rebuild the playbook every season, and I'm surely adding some plays with him in mind. In the third round, Philadelphia went quarterback with Kyle Dillon. I wonder who would have taken Leighton if I didn't select him myself. Michael Lewis, the Heisman Trophy winning running back from New Mexico State, he goes to the New Orleans Saints. With our third round selection, I decided to go offensive line and draft Marvin Walsh. I did sign Kyle Long to be a starter, but I think within a couple seasons, Marvin Walsh could be ready. He's a very solid guard to take here in the middle of the draft. Early in the fourth round, the Dallas Cowboys select Ben Ayers, who would have been my receiver target if Price was taken before we could select him. Caden Sweezy goes to the Seahawks. I had interest in adding him even after making 2 O-line picks already. In the fifth round, I decided to go running back. Marion Peppers was my second favorite back in this class, and he has 69 overall with hidden development. He's coming out of Valdosta State with 88 speed, 83 break tackle, a lot of solid ratings here across the board, along with 74 catching, high agility at 95. I am really excited to play with him this preseason. The Dolphins, by the way, they just continued to make solid picks, taking high overall players relative to their spot selecting. They go Leon Robertson. In the sixth round, Ned Norris, quarterback, goes to Buffalo. In the sixth round, I selected defensive end Dom Poe. That was a position I wanted to address at some point. This was a bit late, and Poe is probably more of a practice squad player, at least as a rookie. But he has decent speed, decent finesse moves. I'd like to develop him for sure. And in the seventh round, our final pick was fullback Jimmy McDaniel. He may go to the practice squad. With Andy Janovich approaching regression, I felt like McDaniel was a solid pick, and he has a lot of good skills. He's not as good as Janovich right now, but maybe one day he could be. My last question was, where would Sidney Jean-Charles end up? The quarterback we tried to recruit in Kalispell, he went to Minnesota. Had an alright career, didn't become a high-rated prospect or anything like that, but he wasn't selected anywhere in the draft. Here are some of the top players, however. Justin Colbert, the number 1 quarterback selected. The Saints have added the best day 1 pocket passer and day 1 starter in the draft. Colbert, I would say, compares very much to Teddy Bridgewater with his ratings and arm strength that is good but not great. The Chargers selected Oliver Raymond. He will need some time for his game to come together. He has a strong arm and he likes to throw downfield, but struggles on some of those short, precise passes. He does have good throw under pressure, and we're definitely going to see him twice a season. Bill Williams went to the Chiefs. They took one of the top guards in the class who's a better run blocker than pass blocker on day 1. They weren't done there, as they also selected LaMarcus Sampson in this deep receiver class. They lose Sammy Watkins, but they gain a receiver with solid speed and route running, but still is a bit raw at the position. The Raiders began everything by selecting edge rusher Princeton Ross. 6'6", 270 pounds. I'd compare his skill set to Ed Oliver's. Oliver's a dynamic athlete, but a better run stopper than pass rusher in Madden, and there's a ton of upside there. The Raiders also selected Amani Jones, who is already their top third down back, so expect to see him week 4. Solid speed and break tackle ability. Nice skill set, doesn't have the best elusive skills though. The Dolphins, Landon Shanky and Myles Garrett in one offseason. That's an outstanding revamp for their defense. The Bills, Hayden Jean-Charles. Top player in the whole class, 81 overall, hidden development. He compares to Rob Gronkowski. There's no other way to put it. The Lions took the first receiver in Terrell Corville. Solid speed. He is a deep route running receiver. I actually think his skill set is very similar to Marvin Jones, the player he's replacing. And oddly enough, Jason Burgess compares to Curtis Samuel, the player he's replacing in Carolina. Great speed, solid short route running, but pretty raw, as Samuel was coming out of Ohio State. The Dolphins could have taken Deion Price, but instead selected Jaquan Jennings. He is a hidden development receiver. The speed is all right. He's a good short route runner. He's probably going to be more of a slot receiver there in Miami. You want a comparison? How about Jamison Crowder? Next up, DeMar Thomas, whose speed is a little lacking, but he makes up for it with man cover ability and press. I think he's the man coverage version of Richard Sherman. I was even considering Adric Young in the middle of this class, with his route running skills being his top 3. And I think that if the Bucs play him, he has a nice future. Michael Lewis, he's really just a pure speed back. He doesn't even catch the ball all that well. It's his speed is his main trait he brings to the table for the Saints. Ben Ayers for the Cowboys. If I didn't get Price, Ayers would have been great. Doesn't have the same deep route running or the same speed as Price, but he has the same strengths. Caden Sweezy. I kind of felt like he'd be a little bit better, but he's just a much better pass blocker than run blocker. And without his athleticism, I think his overall would be a lot lower. I then wanted to go find, where's Sidney Jean-Charles? He was picked up by the Minnesota Vikings after being undrafted out of Minnesota. Sid has hidden development. He needs a lot of work, but he gets to sit behind Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, and who knows what his future holds. He's nowhere near ready to play, but what kind of player will he be a few years from now? Dalvin Cook, by the way, no longer in Minnesota, ended up signing with the Baltimore Ravens. And Drew Lock is indeed QB1 with the Bears. The rest of this is all stuff that happened after the live stream. Reset our depth chart and everything. Trent Williams will play right tackle, not left, because that means 2 games a year versus Joey Bosa and Frank Clark. He wouldn't match up with them on the left side. Right now, Josh Rosen is our starting quarterback. I have gave him number 9, and he's finally getting his chance with a solid team around him after all we've done this offseason. Now, I changed his number, and somehow his salary got adjusted here. I plan to fix this next year, but there must be some bug with salaries when you're editing players. I've already made a note that he should have $22.8 million. Here's a look at our starting defense. It is very similar to a year ago. The offense, though, has a lot of change. And here are some of the players you should look forward to watching in the preseason. It's the second preseason for Sean Pitts, and I think that he could make the active roster as the primary backup to Royce Freeman's role. Tight end Nate Burke might be more of a practice squad player, but he offers good speed at tight end. Markel Pittman was my favorite undrafted rookie that I signed. He comes from Notre Dame. He has some strength in his game, good power moves, and he may make the active roster with a solid preseason. I have signed outside linebacker Terrell Basham. I'm trying to find that third edge rusher, and if Basham's not it, I may have to look for a trade. I also signed safety Rayshawn Jenkins, a former Charger, mainly because if he plays special teams, he has great hit power and speed. Here is a look at our schedule for this year. Our first preseason game, by the way, will be against Drew Lock and the Bears. But the real games begin against the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Browns. All 3 are very strong teams. We do not play the Dolphins this year. We don't play the Chargers and Oliver Raymond until late. We close against the Bengals, and we face the NFC East this season. I have gone through all 32 teams' rosters, and I have moved some players to different positions. I have done this so they don't incorrectly identify certain spots as needs because they have 2 good left ends and not a great right end. Ross is moved to right end for the Raiders, and this also made him a scheme fit. I also decided for key undrafted free agents, I was going to edit their contracts to be the appropriate 3-year deals they would be getting in real life. So Sidney Jean-Charles will not be a free agent after this season. Neither will Xavier Bozeman, who was signed by the Oakland Raiders, and he has hidden development, the former Kalispell standout in the Dynasty. will now be a rival in Oakland. Marion Triplett is now going to be a starter in Houston as he has taken over that outside linebacker spot from Whitney Merciless. In Cleveland, Glenn Hayes is now the third cornerback on the Browns depth chart. He should be playing a lot this season. Centarius Phillips sadly is still fifth on their receiver depth chart. We'll see if they trade Antonio Callaway and get Phillips some chances. Oliver Raymond is the day one quarterback for the Chargers. Sharquez Towns is going up the depth chart in Miami. He's now behind Kenyon Drake, and I don't think he's far away from being the outright starter and top running back with this team. And with the Saints, Justin Colbert will start on day one. He'll have a chance to develop alongside Alvin Kamara, and once he's healthy again, which will be soon, Michael Thomas. I can't wait for year 3 in the Broncos franchise. Please leave your thoughts below. What did you think of this offseason? Do you think Josh Rosen is the answer for this year? And will this team take a big leap forward? I can't wait to get these games going. I do plan to stream some of the preseason. Probably going to do that Tuesday. But I want to give a special thanks to Blackjack for helping us with another draft class. He did so much work for this one and added so many players. I just basically give him free creative control to do whatever he wants to do, as long as he doesn't tell me any ratings or developments. I like the way he goes about rating players. I think we're going to have a lot of fun stars created in this series, and they're going to be all around our league. And one thing I like that he does is he really defines strengths and weaknesses. His work with the draft classes has already made this such a fun series, especially with what's going on with like Miami and now quarterbacks coming in from the Kalispell series. And next year is the Brandon Warren class. That is going to do it for this one, everybody. Please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications so you know the next time the Denver Broncos franchise is posted and year 3 is coming your way this week. Have a great day and I'll see you then.